Would Brian ever physically harm Lynette?
Absolutely not.
Hooker was detained for 5 days by Bahamian authorities, then released without charges in the disappearance of his wife, Lynette.
Given how much has been said about Brian Hooker, is there anything that you would like the public to know, those who consider him guilty?
I would ask those watching to treat him the way you.
She documented everything. Every sunrise. Every island. Every meal she cooked in a solar oven in the middle of the ocean. For years, Lynette Hooker put her whole life on camera and shared it with the world. And then, on one single night, the camera stopped. Her husband says she fell overboard. He says the currents took her. He says he tried everything he could. He also says it took him 7 hours to travel water that sits roughly 4 miles from where he started. He reported her missing. He was then arrested, questioned, released, and today, confirmed on the record by the Royal Bahamas Police Commissioner herself, he remains a suspect. Not in a tabloid. Not in a rumor. In an active criminal investigation. 2 of them. One run by the Bahamian government. One run by the United States Coast Guard. No charges have been filed. Brian Hooker's attorney has stated clearly and repeatedly that he denies any wrongdoing, that he is heartbroken, cooperating, and focused entirely on finding his wife. We are not here to hand you a conclusion. We are not here to tell you what happened on that water. We are here to lay out what investigators know, what the evidence shows, and what questions have not yet been answered. And there is one detail, one piece of this account, that a 15-year veteran boat captain in the area said stopped him completely. We will get there. But first, before we go any further, drop your city in the comments right now. Tell us what time it is where you are watching this. This story has reached every corner of the world and we want to see exactly where our community is tonight. Now let's go back to the beginning. Because to understand what investigators are looking at, you need to understand who Lynette Hooker was. She quit her career. Sold her house. Gave away everything she owned. All of it to sail. Lynette Hooker was 55 years old. A mother. A woman who had spent more than a decade on the water with her husband of about 25 years, Brian Hooker. The 2 of them documented their life at sea on Instagram and YouTube under the name The Sailing Hookers, a channel where Lynette was clearly the heart of every frame. She filmed sea turtles from just below the surface. She paddle-boarded through calm Caribbean mornings. She baked cinnamon rolls in a solar oven and posted the results online like someone who had finally found exactly where she was supposed to be. Her mother confirmed she grew up around lakes and boats. Her daughter described her as fit, active, and completely at home on the water. That last part matters. Because when you understand how comfortable Lynette Hooker was on that ocean, the account of how she disappeared becomes harder, not easier, to accept at face value. We will come back to that. Saturday, April 4, 2026. Hopetown, Bahamas. The Hookers spent the early evening at the Abaco Inn, a small, well-known spot on Elbow Cay that sits right on the water. A bartender who works there and who is familiar with the local geography would later tell reporters that something in the timeline Brian described did not line up with what he observed that evening. We will return to that. At approximately 7:30 p.m., 4 minutes after sunset, according to Bahamian officials, Brian and Lynette Hooker boarded an 8-foot hard-bottom dinghy. They were heading back to their anchored yacht, the Soulmate, moored near Elbow Cay. The distance from Hopetown to that anchoring area, approximately 2.5 miles. According to the account Brian gave to Bahamian police, conditions on the water changed quickly. Winds picked up, he would later tell a friend they were running around 20 knots. The water got choppy. And then, he told police, Lynette fell overboard. Here is an important technical detail that Brian included in his account. Lynette was wearing the engine's ignition lanyard, a safety cord designed to cut engine power automatically if the operator goes into the water. When Lynette went overboard, the engine shut off. Brian told police he threw a flotation device toward her. He said he last saw her swimming in the direction of the shore, according to Hopetown Fire and Rescue Team lead Richard Cook, who spoke to CNN. Then he said he lost sight of her. With no engine in one oar, Brian said he began to paddle. In a private message to his friend Daniel Danforth, messages later obtained and reviewed by both CBS News and CNN, Brian wrote this: "He drifted and tried to paddle with one oar for the next 7 hours, until he washed up behind the shore of the next island over." That island was Marsh Harbor. According to Hopetown Volunteer Fire and Rescue, Marsh Harbor sits approximately 4 miles from Hopetown, which is where the couple started, not where they were going. Elbow Cay, their stated destination, is roughly 2.5 miles from Hopetown. Brian arrived at the Marsh Harbor boat yard. He told a person there that his wife was missing. That person called the police. Hopetown Volunteer Fire and Rescue received the call at 5:12 in the morning, approximately 9.5 hours after the couple had left the dock. Now here is where the account starts to collect questions, not from investigators alone, but from people who knew the couple personally. Daniel Danforth, the same friend Brian had messaged, later spoke to CBS News. He said something that stood out to him as he compared Brian's private retelling to what was appearing in media reports. He said the stories did not really match up. In the messages Brian sent him, Lynette was described as casually swimming back toward the sailboat. In the account given to police, she had been swept away by strong currents. Danforth also told CBS News that the hookers always had their phones with them. They posted videos constantly. He said he wondered why Brian's phone did not work that night, or why neither of them had a phone on the dinghy. No answer to that question has been given publicly. Danforth also noted something else. Shortly after Lynette disappeared, Brian moved the boat, the Soulmate, away from Elbow Cay, where it had been anchored. Danforth told CBS News the detail concerned him. Brian Hooker's attorney has not addressed those specific points publicly. Brian has denied any wrongdoing. There is one more question raised by someone who knew the couple's habits better than almost anyone: Lynette's own daughter, Carly Aylesworth. She told CBS News that Brian was always the one driving the dinghy. He was always in charge of the key. The fact that Lynette had the ignition lanyard on her when she went overboard, Carly said, did not make sense to her. Brian Hooker's attorney has denied wrongdoing on his behalf and has not specifically addressed the key question publicly. And here is where the account, as Brian gave it, meets the water itself. When investigators started examining this case, they did not have a body. They did not have a witness other than Brian Hooker. What they had was geography. And geography has its own language. Fox News Digital traveled to the area and recreated the route the hookers took that night. They brought in Mo Monesteem, a boat captain who has spent 15 years working the Great Abaco Island waters. He guided the recreation from the harbor near the Abaco Inn, turning southwest after clearing the harbor mouth and moving between the western coast of Elbow Cay and the eastern coast of Lubbers Quarters. The ride from the harbor to the popular anchoring area near Elbow Cay, where the Soulmate was moored, took approximately 4 minutes. 4 minutes. Monesteem told Fox News Digital that what stumped him was not the accident itself. What stumped him was the absence. He said it is very hard to disappear in those waters. The sea is sheltered. The land is close on all sides. The water in that part of the Bahamas is clear enough that from a moving boat, you can see stingrays on the seafloor. You can see turtles moving beneath the surface. He said that if someone goes overboard and does not survive in those waters, someone would likely see something the next day. He said he would see it from his own boat. And nobody saw anything. Now, and this matters for the integrity of this analysis, we are going to be honest about what conditions were actually like that night. Winds of 20 knots are not gentle. A nighttime crossing in an 8-foot open dinghy, without life jackets, in deteriorating weather is a genuinely dangerous situation. Disorientation in the dark on open water is real, and it happens to experienced sailors. Currents in the Bahamas can shift direction quickly and do not move in predictable straight lines. A person who falls into moving water at night in those conditions faces serious odds. All of that is true. All of that is fair. And none of it is being dismissed here. Here is what is also true: investigators know all of that. They understand open water. They understand nighttime conditions. They understand the Abaco Islands and what a genuine accidental overboard looks like in that geography. They weighed every one of those factors. And they still arrested Brian Hooker 4 days later, based on, in the direct words of Royal Bahamas Police Force Assistant Commissioner Eduardo Dames speaking to Reuters, some probable cause. That phrase, probable cause, has legal weight. It is not a feeling. It is not suspicion based on grief or assumption. Under Bahamian law, as under U.S. law, probable cause requires that investigators have reasonably trustworthy information sufficient to believe that a crime may have been committed. It is the legal threshold that separates a witness from a suspect. Brian Hooker crossed that threshold in the eyes of the investigators running this case. The search that followed Lynette's disappearance was not a small operation. The Royal Bahamas Police Force, the Royal Bahamas Defense Force, Hopetown Volunteer Fire and Rescue, U.S. Coast Guard aerial assets, professional divers, drone technology, cadaver dogs, and submersible drone operations were all deployed. Shoreline patrols covered the land. The sea was searched from above and below. The only thing recovered was a flotation device. Brian told Carly in a voicemail, later shared with CBS News, that it was the one he had thrown toward Lynette when she went overboard. Lynette Hooker was not found. This is where we want to hear from you. Put it in the comments. What do you think investigators may have overlooked in this case? What question has not been asked yet? What detail stands out to you? You might be closer to something important than you realize. Before that night in April 2026, there was a night in January 2024. More than 2 years earlier, Lynette Hooker sent a series of private messages to a friend, a fellow boater named Marnie Stevenson, someone she had met while sailing through Florida in 2023. Those messages were obtained exclusively by CBS News and verified by multiple outlets. In them, Lynette described a moment that had happened quietly and far from any camera. After only 6 weeks of sailing together, after she had quit her career, sold her house, and given away everything she owned to be on that boat, the marriage had fractured. She wrote to Marnie, they had decided to call it quits. She was not going back. She described it simply. She said it had been real bad. She wrote, I can't be out there with him. She left Brian at that point and went to stay with her mother in Florida. About a month later, in late February 2024, the messages show the two had reconciled. Marnie checked in on her. Lynette replied with heart emojis. She went back to the boat. In January 2024, Lynette also told her daughter Carly something she had not shared publicly. According to CNN's reporting, she told Carly that Brian had threatened to throw her off the boat during an argument. Carly separately told CNN that her mother had confided in her about another incident, one that CNN reported but stated it could not independently confirm with law enforcement. Brian Hooker's attorney has denied all allegations made by Carly Aylesworth on his behalf. These are not our words. They are Lynette's. Written in private. Shared with a friend. Never intended for a headline. They are now part of the investigative record. And here is what is important to hold on to: Lynette went back. She made a choice to return. Whatever she was carrying, she carried it quietly. She kept posting sunsets. She kept filming the water. She kept showing up on that boat on the same ocean, with the same man. Until the night she didn't. Before we continue, I want to pause. Just for a moment. For every family still waiting by a phone that never rings. For every woman whose name deserved more than it got. For every case that went cold before the truth ever had a chance to surface. If something in Lynette's story feels close to home, if you have ever felt unseen or unheard in a place that was supposed to feel like home, this moment is for you. I pray that the people searching for Lynette do not stop. I pray that truth finds its way into every one of these cases. And I pray that justice, slow as it sometimes moves, never loses her name. If that means something to you, type justice for Lynette in the comments right now. Let her name be the loudest thing in this section. Sunday evening. The day after Lynette disappeared. Brian Hooker called his stepdaughter Carly Aylesworth. The call came in around 8 to 8:30 p.m., Carly told CNN. He told her that her mother had been missing since the night before. That search teams were looking. That he would come up to see her soon. And then he ended the call. Carly told NBC News that his voice on that call sounded monotone and relaxed. She said she felt like he had just dropped a bomb on her and walked away. Lynette's mother, Darlene Hamlet, moved immediately. She drove to the Bahamian consulate in Miami to secure an emergency passport so she could travel to the islands. She told the Associated Press she had not heard from Brian in nearly 2 days and was waiting to hear what he had to say. She described her daughter as someone who had grown up around lakes, boats, sailing, and swimming her entire life. Carly hired an attorney. The U.S. Coast Guard interviewed her separately for 2 hours. Days later, Brian left a voicemail for Carly. She shared it with CBS News. In it, he told her that Hopetown Search and Rescue had recovered a flotation device, the one he said he had thrown to Lynette when she went overboard. That voicemail is now part of the public record. On April 8, 4 days after Lynette disappeared, the Royal Bahamas Police Force arrested Brian Hooker. Assistant Commissioner Eduardo Dames told Reuters the arrest was based on some probable cause. Brian was taken in as a suspect. His attorney, Terrell Butler, said at the time that he had been cooperating fully with investigators and denied any wrongdoing, categorically and unequivocally, in her words. She described him as heartbroken and in an extremely fragile emotional state. He was questioned intensively. Investigators focused, according to his attorney, on his personal life and his marriage, not on physical evidence from the boat. A Bahamian magistrate approved an extension of his detention through Monday evening. During the investigation, Brian was brought back out to the boat handcuffed, accompanying officers as they continued their work. According to his attorney, he fell overboard in rough seas while disembarking from the vessel. He was rescued by officers and sustained a visible abrasion and a knee injury that left him limping. His attorney reported this in writing. It is part of the documented record of those days. On April 13, the Department of Public Prosecutions recommended that no charges be filed at this time, pending further investigation. Brian Hooker walked out of the police station without speaking to media. The following morning he boarded a plane to Nassau, then flew on to Atlanta. His attorney cited a family emergency involving his ill mother as the reason for his departure. A source familiar with the matter confirmed to Fox News Digital that he landed in Atlanta on Wednesday afternoon. He is now back in the United States. He has retained a Michigan-based attorney, Crystal Marie Hauser, who has publicly asked people to extend Brian the same consideration they would want if they were in his position. Royal Bahamas Police Commissioner Shanta Knowles confirmed to NBC News that Brian Hooker remains a suspect. The words "no charges and investigation closed" are not the same sentence. They have not become the same sentence. Not yet. While Brian Hooker was in custody, investigators were not standing still. Under a search warrant, Bahamian authorities boarded the couple's yacht, the Soulmate, and removed items that CBS News reviewed directly from the warrant itself. The warrant listed a digital video recorder, digital tablets, and cell phone-related equipment. The language of the warrant stated that these devices may be material evidence, or may contain material evidence, related to a missing person causing bodily harm. That last phrase, causing bodily harm, is not standard language for a missing persons case. It is language that points investigators in a specific direction. It signals that the people who wrote that warrant were not simply trying to understand a boating accident. They were looking for something. Those devices are currently in the hands of investigators. Now let's talk about what investigators can actually extract from a seized phone or tablet, because this matters for understanding where this case may be heading. A digital device does not forget. It holds a precise record of every call made and received, with timestamps down to the second. It holds text messages, including messages that were deleted, which forensic tools can often recover. It holds location data, where the device was, and when, tracked through GPS and cell tower pings. It holds browser history, what a person searched for, and on what date. It holds app activity. It holds photographs with embedded metadata that record the exact time and location a photo was taken. In a case where the only account of what happened comes from one person and where no body has been recovered, the digital record becomes the closest thing investigators have to a second witness. This is why the warrant did not simply ask for the phone. It asked for the video recorder, the tablets, and the cell phone equipment. They were building a picture from every screen in that cabin. There is also a matter of public record that provides relevant background context, not proof of anything, but history that investigators and any future prosecutors will have full access to. In 2015, a Michigan police report from Kentwood documents an incident in which both Brian and Lynette Hooker accused each other of assault during a physical altercation. Brian was documented with a swollen and bloody nose. Lynette, who an officer noted appeared highly intoxicated, told police that Brian had struck her in the forehead, though no visible injuries on her were documented at the scene. A prosecutor reviewed the case and determined there was insufficient evidence to establish who had initiated the confrontation. The case was dismissed without charges being filed against either party. Public court records also show that Brian Hooker was acquitted by a Michigan jury on a child abuse charge in 2006. Neither of those records is a conviction. Neither establishes guilt of any kind in this case. Both are part of the documented public history that now sits alongside a missing persons investigation and two active criminal probes. The final video the Hookers posted to their YouTube channel before Lynette's disappearance, according to reporting from the New York Post, included a moment where the couple joked about getting sick of each other. Nobody is accused of anything in that video. It was a joke. Couples on boats, living in close quarters for months at a time, joke about exactly that. But it was the last one. And Lynette Hooker had written, in private, 2 years earlier, that 6 weeks of being out there with him had been enough to make her leave. She came back. Lynette Hooker has not been found. The Royal Bahamas Defense Force suspended active search operations after exhausting every viable zone, tide drift analysis, wind pattern data, and current modeling had run their full course. Every area that could be searched was searched. Drones covered the air. Divers went below the surface. Cadaver dogs were brought in from the United States. Submersible drone operations ran along the seafloor. Shoreline patrols walked every accessible stretch of land in the search area. The only physical item recovered was a flotation device. The U.S. Coast Guard criminal investigation remains open and active. The Bahamian investigation remains open and active. Electronic devices from the Soulmate are in the hands of investigators and are being reviewed. Brian Hooker is in the United States. He has legal representation on both sides of the border. The Royal Bahamas Police Commissioner has confirmed on the record that he remains a suspect. His attorney has asked the public to give him the benefit of the doubt and to treat him the way any of us would want to be treated if we found ourselves in a situation this painful and this public. Carly Aylesworth traveled to the Bahamas. She boarded the Soulmate, the boat where her mother had been living. She stood on the deck her mother had stood on. She sat and spoke to her mother out loud. She told the Today Show, "When I first got here, I sat up there and looked at the boat and started talking to her like she was here. I said, 'Hey Mom, I'm here. Wherever you are. I just want to talk to you and see you again.'" She has said she will not stop until she has answers. The questions that opened this video remain open. What happened between 7:30 p.m. and 4 a.m. on that water? What do the seized devices show? What did the bartender at the Abacoan observe that did not align with the timeline given to police? What does the warrant language material evidence related to a missing person causing bodily harm tell us about the direction investigators are moving? None of those questions have public answers yet. Brian Hooker has denied everything. His attorney has asked for patience and fairness. Investigators have confirmed they are still working. And somewhere between those positions, in the data on a seized device, in the testimony of people who were present, in the careful, patient work of two separate criminal investigations on two sides of a border, the answer to what happened to Lynette Hooker is waiting. The ocean does not preserve a scene the way land does. But a phone does. This case is not closed. The next development will not be a small one. And when it comes, the people who are already here will be the first to know. Make sure you are one of them.